page. This week, we are going to be talking about making phonics fun. Sorry, I'm seeing all the comments now about people who have had 8 snow days in a row. Oh my gosh, Pam, that's craziness in Indiana. So it's not just Texas, I know, that's getting this crazy weather. It's all over. We just seem to be the ones that are, struggling the most, I guess. I don't know if that's fair to say, but anyways, so moving on. Today is making phonics fun. So what we're not going to do today is we're not going to talk a lot about the research and theory behind phonics. If that's something you're interested in, I'm going to share a link to a blog post that went up earlier this week, and that's got a little bit more of the research behind it. Hopefully you are already utilizing phonics in your classroom, especially if you are in lower grade levels, K through 2. If not, then let me persuade you today to do that. And after this, you can go check out all of that research and fun behind phonics and why it helps make our students successful readers. So let's jump in today's roadmap so you'll have an idea of where we're going. We're going to do a very quick phonics overview, just talking about what phonics is. And then I'm going to go over some easy phonics routines that you can use every week. You can go through these. I'm not going to necessarily present them in a particular order that you can use them. You can just kind of mix and match and, use what works for you. And then we're going to go on to some, I should have called this something different, but some more practice ideas, which you would probably more so use in a small group format, but they could be done whole group as well. So what is phonics? Phonics is a visual and written skill. Unlike phonemic awareness and phonological awareness, which we have been talking about, we'll get to phonemic awareness in I think that's 2 lives away from now. No, actually that's next week. Next week we are talking phonemic awareness. But this is not just an auditory skill. There's visual and writing components that are involved in phonics. And this is how we help our students learn to read unfamiliar words. As they are coming across words with these different patterns in them, they are able to identify these patterns that we have explicitly taught them. So just noting, phonemic awareness are these sounds in spoken words. It does not involve, looking at letters, reading phonics, spelling patterns, any of that. That is all spoken. And then phonics is going to be where the relationship between sounds and the written symbols come in. Both are extremely, extremely important for our young students. And if we don't shore them up on both, then they are going to have a rocky road with reading and run into some trouble later on in their academic career. So let's look at some easy routines that you can incorporate. During this live, it's kind of beyond the scope of the live to go over really a scope and sequence of how you should introduce phonics patterns, what should be first, what should be next, or whatever. Hopefully your school has a phonics curriculum that you are already using that gives you that scope and sequence or order. If not, there are tons of resources out there if you Google. So again, we're not going to go over what order to introduce things. That's something that's going to be on today. So, explicit and systematic instruction. When we are introducing these phonics patterns, we want to make sure that we are very explicit in showing students. This is kind of like that direct teaching. This is not something necessarily that like, hey, let's try and figure out what these 2 letters, like C and H together, a digraph, what they're going to make when they're together. That's not the time for this kind of discovery. We are going to be very explicit, and we are going to have a system when we are introducing these. The first thing that I like to start off with on maybe Monday or very early on in the week is doing some kind of exemplar poster or anchor chart. I say exemplar poster because it doesn't always have to be the teacher creating them. This is a chance where students can actually help to create these too. So that would be your exemplar poster versus anchor chart. Both serve the same role really. I wasn't as prepared because like I said, it's been kind of crazy around here. I don't have my awesome construction paper ready, but I always just do kind of like a circle map. And so say our phonics pattern, maybe you're doing a word family, or maybe you're doing, it might help if you could see me. Maybe we are doing a digraph or a blend or something like that. Let's say we're doing the SL blend. Okay, so once we're introducing this and we're doing our systematic and our explicit approach, I want to create some kind of anchor chart that is going to be visible for the students throughout the course of the week when we are practicing this pattern. So it might be that we are going through and just recording words, or you can add pictures. It really depends on where your students are at. If you have the time, I always recommend adding pictures. So maybe I start them off with slip, and I always like to underline where that pattern is so they can identify. You can also do it in a different color, which is really helpful if you want to do the rest of the word in black, but your pattern in whatever color. It helps to stand out for the students. And then they're going to start, hopefully, giving me some words that have that as well. So slam, maybe. Slug. And so on and so forth. That's something that can be available to students hanging on the wall for the remainder of the week. It's very helpful. A lot of phonics programs will already have like a big chart that you're using with students that might have a lot of these words on there too. So that might be a chance for the students really to create their own exemplar poster where maybe they're working in a small group or however you're able to kind of fashion things right now. And they are creating that poster together. Let's get back to here. The next routine that I like to incorporate is real versus nonsense words. Now, I know there's debate out there about should we be using nonsense words, and my answer is yes and no, and it's not really just my answer, it's what research shows. So, nonsense words are okay if they follow a pattern that other words in our language will follow, right? Because students are able to identify that pattern and use it in context of reading. However, if it doesn't follow, if it's literally just like completely random, like, I don't even know. I'm not going to come up with one off the top of my head, but if it's completely random, it's really not helpful for students because it's not following that pattern. So I'm going to give you some examples of how you can do this. This can be done whole group or it can be done small group, whatever works for you. Real verse, are we on real verse nonsense? Hold on, y'all, I told you it's been a whole week. Real verse nonsense. Okay, I almost put out the wrong thing. I like to do just one of these little sliders. They're very easy to make. If you have sentence strips, then you already have everything that you need to do these. You can also just do it with cardstock. You don't need sentence strips. But basically, we can go through, and if we're working on the ig pattern this week, then students are going to give me the beginning sound, and then we're going to give that phonics, that sound for the phonics target skill for the week. Ig, pig. And then we're going to determine, is that a real word or a nonsense word? This is where I like to create just a simple T-chart, and we have real and we have nonsense, and this is a great opportunity for students to write these down on their own. You can obviously record on the board as well. For my space right now, I'm not going to show you recording on a board, but just a T-chart, real and nonsense. It's nice to have them go along with it. Moving down, ig, jig. Let's move forward to one that is going to be a nonsense. Ig, mig. And so we can have discussion. Is it real? Is it nonsense? And then we're going to record it. So you can see the purpose of these nonsense words aligns with the phonics pattern that we are trying to have students learn and kind of internalize. And so it makes sense to use this pattern. It's not some random pattern that words don't follow. Up next are going to be word sorts. So we kind of just did a word sort with real versus nonsense. But you can do word sorts where the words follow the pattern or they don't. So it could just be either or. Either they are in this pattern or they are not in this pattern. And then another way that I like to use these sorts is after you've gone through maybe a few weeks of, if say you're doing digraphs and you've done CH, TH, and WH, then maybe after that you want to do a review week, and so you might do a sort where there's all three of those words, words that follow those patterns. So I will show you an example of that. Possibly. Okay, so very low tech, just some cards, sentence strips that I've written on. And so students can go through, and for this one, I'm trying to remember what I did. It was if it falls into the CH digraph or not, and so students can sort based on that. Again, this can be whole group or it can be done in a small group. So we've got shop, does not fit into our pattern. That, let me get to one that does so I can have it as my anchor word at the top. Chin does fall into the pattern that we are focusing on, so I'm going to have that here. And it's helpful too if you are hanging these up on a whiteboard or something to have whatever the pattern is, CH here, not CH, so as students are sorting, they are able to identify that. But very easy, very low tech, doesn't take a lot of prep, and that's what I'm all about, especially this year, is what can we do and what can we do simply. Let's get that out of the way. Okay. The next routine that I love doing with students is just a simple flipbook. This is something that students can create on their own. You can have them pre-made for students so that they go in and are writing, or they can, staple and do all the things on their own as well. But it's just a simple flipbook. Let me switch my cameras again because it's going to be easier for you to see. Y'all, technology is great, but it's a lot sometimes. Okay. Here we go. So it's literally just another piece of sentence strip, and then I've got smaller pieces that are stapled here. And so students can go through, and so maybe we're working on the AY spelling pattern, or A, 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 and then I think I did some examples with some blends as well at the end. So really wherever students are at, they can go through, but this is something really nice for them to make, and then they can go through and practice with this on their own as well. It's something that you can send home with students to practice at home for parents that may not have supplies at home, so that's another way to create that home school connection. Next routine is dictation. This is something that I like to do after the students have had a couple days with the phonics pattern for that week. It's not something I necessarily would do on the first day, and that's just a very simple whiteboard and marker activity where I am dictating, I'm saying the word, and then students are writing that word on their whiteboard. This is really nice, A, because it's giving them practice with writing that pattern, but more importantly, it's also giving you a informal assessment. You can watch as students are writing and see, okay, he needs a little bit more practice on this. She's got it. Maybe she's ready to move on to some sort of extension or a more thorough practice, whatever it might be. So it's really nice for that as well. Next thing that I like doing with my students, again, this is probably like a midweek towards the end of the week if you're doing that one pattern per week, would be a word hunt or a book hunt where students are searching for that pattern within books that maybe are in their book box. Maybe if you have a lot of things hanging around the classroom, they can search on your anchor charts and all of that as well. But it's really nice for them to go through and they can just create, like in their journal, a list of words that follow that pattern that you are practicing for the week. And the last thing that I want to mention with these quick routines is that students need repeated exposure and authentic practice with these patterns. This is not a passive thing for students where you can just show them. They need to be actively involved. I'm about to show you several very active activities that you can get students involved with. But they need that exposure over and over throughout the week and then past that because these spelling patterns are not going anywhere. And so this is where I like to pull those into my small group or guided reading time and give them more exposure and practice with those. Let's move on. So the first kind of, I guess, more hands-on, more fun practice that I want to show all of you is Phonics Baskets. You may have seen these before, but I wanted to include it just in case any of you have not because I think it is a great tool for our students. So I'm going to pull mine up. And so they're literally just baskets labeled with a letter. Let's get rid of this for a moment. And maybe we're doing beginning sound, so this might be a early kindergarten, or maybe even if you're in pre-K and you're already working on these in pre-K. And they're just lettering, maybe I'm just doing 2 target sounds right now, C and P. And I just got random items in here that I found in my house literally within like less than 5 minutes, I would say. I just went through, so a lot of them are Aces toys. But for example, in C, we've got corn, cup, candy, coffee filter. In P, we've got pig, pan, plate, pumpkin. And so you can have these items obviously not sorted out to start with, and then students are working to sort these out based by how they follow that phonics pattern. So it could be something as easy as those beginning sounds. Now, I know right now with COVID that having actual items like that may not be possible. It may be something that you can do whole group so that you can still bring in those real items. But it's something that can easily be done with pictures, and you can find those online pretty easily as well. So it's not all for naught if you can't bring in the real items right now. But a couple other ideas, you can use these for digraphs, you can use these for blends. They don't have to just be for a beginning sound to be effective. Next on the list is modeling dough, aka Play-Doh. So what you will need if you are going to use this hands-on approach is magnetic letters, or you can just do whiteboards and markers, or honestly, that could just be on a piece of paper with a pencil, and then modeling dough for the students to use. And ideas for this could be just for sounding out CVC words or another phonics pattern, or you can use it for actually blending them, for consonant blends, for digraphs, silent E, etc. This one can really be used pretty much regardless of what pattern you are studying. So, for example, let me get my camera set up first this time before we switch over. For example, let's say our word is, my magnetic letters are not with me, so we are going to improvise just like teachers do all the time. We're just going to pull out a whiteboard. Okay, so if I had my magnetic letters, I would go ahead and have my students build the word. Let's just say we're working on the at family or at pattern right now. Go ahead and build cat. And so this is something that you can help model, help them through as they are building this word, because that's really not necessarily, it can be the focus of the lesson. But right now, let's say I just want to work on sounding these out. And so what we're going to do is just a little ball of Play-Doh for each of the sounds. Now, this is something that you have to give some definite direction and practice with. We're not going to spend all day rolling the perfect ball and spend all of our time on that, because you know how kiddos are and they can get super wrapped up in that, and that is not the focus. So we've got to make sure that we're intentional with our directions for how we're doing this. But as we're going through, and so we can have them sound this out, and we can also have them practice blending these together. And for that, you might want to have them go ahead and read this chunk, the AT chunk. I'm going to remove these for a moment. Maybe I want them to recognize this word family chunk within the word. And so my goal here is that we are going to sound out the first sound, but then we are going to sound this out as the chunk that it is. At. Okay, and we just run it across cat. So that is another way that you can do that. And like I said, this works with digraphs, it works with blends. You can do it with literally probably any spelling pattern that you, or phonics pattern that you are working on. While I'm bringing up spelling, this was not part of my plan talk today, but I want to talk about it now. I think, this is my opinion, my soapbox for a moment, if you are doing a spelling list every week, I think it is far more beneficial that your spelling list matches the phonics patterns that you're using, so that students are getting that authentic practice with recognizing, writing, and spelling that phonics pattern. So you may not even be doing a spelling list, which I'm fine with that too, but I think if you're doing one, definitely needs to be aligned with your phonics patterns, because you are going to get more bang for your buck than students just trying to memorize random words. We're actually still bringing in that phonics practice. Okay, let's see. Moving on to word ladders. You may have heard of these before. With a word ladder, there are tons of resources out there. There's resources like the consumable books where you can make copies, but then there's also resources on TPT. I do not have any for word ladders, but word ladders are something that I love using with my students in my classroom. So I'm going to show you how you can do them without purchasing anything. You don't need to purchase anything to use word ladders. So what you'll need are clues or words aligned to the phonics skill in focus. I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. You can find a lot of these online too. And then a whiteboard or marker. I always love using whiteboard and markers with my students because it's kind of that low threshold. If we make a mistake, it's so easy to fix, and it just saves us from, tears if we get something wrong. Not always, but it's helpful. And so these are great for examining the sound-symbol relationships, especially because they're going to be not only writing the words, but they're going to be changing the words as they work through the word ladder. So how this works is you begin with a word that's kind of like your target word, and you are basically working towards changing that word to some other word that's way up the ladder. In each step of the ladder, you are going to be changing either one letter, or it might be a blend or a digraph or something that's really just making that one sound. So you might be changing two letters, like if you're changing a digraph, you're really going to change two letters potentially to be able to make that new one sound. So, and then a bonus for this, you are reinforcing rhyming words and word families while teaching these phonics skills. So let me give you an example of that. First, let me erase. I told you it's been a whole week here. But we are doing this, and we are flexible, and we just make things work. And what is our word for 2020, and now it's basically 2021, a pivot. Y'all, I made a shirt with that, but I think I'm about done with that word. Okay, so for our word ladder, maybe our first word, and I'm just throwing out an example, we want to keep these aligned, again, with the phonics pattern that we are actually practicing with students at the time. So let's keep it with the at pattern, word family. So maybe at the bottom of my word ladder, I give students the word that we're starting with, which is cat. Then I'm going to give them a clue, and I might even tell them how many letters they need to change just to remind them to get to that next word. So the clue is, what is something you wear on your head? And hopefully a student will call out hat. And I will remind them they only need to change one letter in this word to create the word hat. And so going up the ladder, And now you can get really cute and have a ladder like printed on here, but you definitely don't need it. Just teach them to start at the bottom of the whiteboard. So we have just changed that beginning sound, that beginning letter, to create our new word. So again, we're reinforcing our word family over here. My next clue, what do you hit with a baseball? What do you hit a baseball with? Oh my gosh. What do you hit a baseball with? Bat. And so again, I'm going to remind them we're just going to change one letter to create that new beginning sound. Bat. Moving up our word ladder with our next clue, what might you take a nap on at school? Mat. Again, reminding we are only changing one sound. Okay, and it doesn't always have to be the beginning sound that you're changing. It can be the ending sound. It can be that medial vowel, or if you're working on more advanced words, it might be even more advanced than that. But it's important that right now I'm focusing on us keeping this phonics pattern here, so that's why I'm only changing the beginning sound or the beginning letter for these. So that is word ladders. They're super fun, and you can make these very challenging, and kiddos get very, very into them. And my last tip for making phonics really stick is to give that authentic practice with Decodable Books. Now, you may have a subscription to Kids or Reading A to Z. Reading A to Z. When I taught kindergarten, we always had a Reading A to Z subscription, and it's a fantastic subscription. And there are others that are like that where you can basically download books to use with your students. And a lot of them are leveled books. Now, me personally, I think leveled books have a time and a place, but when we are working on these foundational phonics skills with students, we need to be using books that are decodable because these decodable books are using those phonics skills. A leveled book may not even have the phonics skill that you are focusing on with your students right then, so it's really not giving them the authentic practice. I just pulled one that I have. I always used to order books through Scholastic, with points after, parents order, you save the points, and I would always try and build up my classroom library that way. So this is one decodable book that I got from there, which it shouldn't even say leveled readers on there, but that's the sticker that I put on there. But anyway, so this, the patterns in this book, a lot of the words follow the short A pattern. So maybe this is a really good book for when we are reviewing that short A sound that we have been practicing, or if we've gone through several word families and we want to go through there. I'm just going to give you a one-page example of this, but you can see they're actually in bold in this book how many words are following that short A pattern. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck here, and students can be successful because they're getting that authentic practice with a book that is intentionally chosen for the phonics pattern that you are working on during that time. If you are on Kids, great news, there is a decodable section. You'll have to play around with the navigation, but you get out basically of the leveled books, and there's a decodable section so that you can find books that follow those certain patterns as well to use with your students. And that is it, y'all. We are going to make it under 30 minutes again today. I am super appreciative of all of you joining. Again, if you are looking for more phonological awareness or maybe letter knowledge tips, I did a few lives on those. Next week, we are going to be talking about phonemic awareness. And then the following week, we'll be talking about orthographic mapping for reading or for really internalizing words, kind of what you might think of when you do sight words. But I'm going to show you some research and theory and some awesome things behind that. I also wanted to let everyone know that this Saturday, I am launching a brand new Facebook group. It's different from the Facebook page that you are watching this on right now. I want to be able to go a little bit more in depth with some of these early literacy things. And so I felt it needed a kind of a different place to live so that my whole feed isn't just this. So you can find that at theteachingtexan.com/group. And you can there's a couple questions you have to answer to get admitted into the group, but anyone can be admitted. Just answer those questions. It doesn't open officially till Saturday, so if you do that today or tomorrow, you won't be approved until Saturday, but Saturday is going to be so much fun. I'm planning a bunch of giveaways. I'm going to go live in the group about midway. I'm thinking the group is going to last maybe about 3 weeks. I think I've just got enough ideas in my head that I think that this is a good amount of time to have our little group. I want everyone to get to know each other. And, I am not the only person that can share awesome tips. So I think it's going to be a great place for all of you to share your reading tips as well. And there's going to be a challenge midway through those 3 weeks on week 2. It's going to be a 5-day guided reading challenge that I think is going to be super fun. just to kind of spruce up guided reading. We're calling it the Guided Reading Glow Up. And there is going to be a winner of that challenge as well. So lots of giveaways, lots of lives. It's just going to be fun, and I want it to be an awesome little reading community. So check that out. And if you're wanting more details on phonics or phonetic decoding, what we spoke about today, you can find that on my website at theteachingtexan.com/phonics. And that's it for today, y'all. Thank you again so much for joining, and I hope to see you next week.